In the 1970s, yearly tuition at a Japanese national university was just 36,000 yen, about $240. Even adjusted for inflation, it was incredibly affordable. Today, that number has skyrocketed to about 540,000 yen, roughly $3,600. That is a 15-fold increase. When I first walked through those university gates, I felt like a world of freedom and a bright future was waiting for me. But beneath my feet lay an invisible weight, the crushing cost of education. Private universities are no exception. They've seen a fourfold increase. While tuition soared, Japan suffered through the lost decades of economic stagnation. With parents' incomes flatlining, as many as 1 in every 2 students, over 50%, now graduate with debt ranging from several million yen, tens of thousands of dollars, to, in extreme cases, as much as 10 million yen, nearly $70,000. This is the new standard for young people in Japan. Welcome to Shimbu channel. I am Japanese and I share insights into Japanese culture and systems. In this video, we are diving into the reality of Japanese scholarships and the hidden cost of information that many people pay without even realizing it. By the end of this video, you'll understand how the system truly works, and more importantly, the strategic moves you can make to minimize the financial burden. Let me ask you, does a scholarship sound like a good thing? In Japan, what we call a scholarship is often, in reality, just a student loan. So, why do so many students commit to such massive debt without fully understanding the reality? Let's look back at the documents I signed at 18 and the financial ignorance that led to my reality check. Section 1. The Name Trap and the Financial Education Void. It was the spring of my 18th year. I was sitting in my parents' living room, running my pen across several documents they handed to me. I saw words like scholarship, but all I felt was relief. My only thought was, finally, the grind of entrance exams is over. I'm actually going to university. I just moved my pen as my parents told me, without really thinking about it. It felt like I was just signing the documents required for my enrollment. That was the only sensation I had. I didn't have the slightest idea what I was actually getting into. There was another element that numbed my sense of reality. Depending on the application, these loans are generally deposited into the student's personal banking account. In my case, money was being deposited into my account every month, but my parents were the ones managing my banking account and all the spending. I had no sense that this was my money or my debt. I never even saw the numbers disappearing into tuition and living expenses. I believe the reason the reality of being in debt was so thin was that the money simply passed through my hands and was operated entirely under my parents' control. Why are 18-year-olds in Japan so defenseless against this massive debt? I think there are 2 main reasons. First is the naming. In English, I think scholarship usually implies a grant that doesn't need to be paid back. But in Japan, the term shogakukin, scholarship, covers everything, including student loans. This linguistic sleight of hand strips away the sense of borrowing money. Second is the financial education void. In general, there are surprisingly few opportunities in Japanese schools to learn about money or contracts. Without much literacy, young people end up entering their first major financial contract before they even enter society. Combined with the Japanese custom where the money passes through the student's account but is actually managed by the parents, debt keeps piling up without the student ever developing a sense of ownership as the borrower. Of course, there are students with high financial literacy, but in general, I believe this is the common issue facing Japanese society. Section 2. Facing the reality right before graduation. 4 years of student life were winding down, and on a winter day, while waiting for spring, I was one of hundreds of students gathered in a massive university lecture hall. The meeting was called the repayment orientation. What they handed me was a stack of documents showing the total amount of debt accumulated over those 4 years. And there it was, a 20-year repayment plan that was about to begin, written in specific and vivid detail. Knowing that soon, this amount will be taken out of my account every single month for the next 20 years. That piece of paper felt unnaturally heavy. For the first time, receiving that invoice, I had to face the reality of this massive debt called the scholarship head-on. I still remember the unique sense of anxiety and impatience I felt at that moment. In Japan, many people are shocked to realize the true burden of their debt only after they enter society and repayment begins. Right as you've just graduated and your income is still unstable, a fixed cost of tens of thousands of yen is pulled from your account every month. It's a reality where it becomes impossible to save any money in the first place, leading many to hesitate to get married or feel anxious about taking the next step in their lives. Even in a society that tends to avoid the word debt, many students realize far too late that this scholarship is actually one of the largest loans they will ever take in their lives. Section 3. The information gap, the hurdle of application-ism. What shocked me even more was a second option I discovered during my senior year. A friend in my lab mentioned that their tuition waiver had been approved. A waiver? Such a system exists? When I looked into it, I found there were indeed systems where tuition could be fully or partially waived based on family circumstances and academic performance. Given my family situation and the grades back then, it was highly likely I would have qualified if I had applied earlier. I rushed through the paperwork and successfully got my tuition waived from the second semester of my senior year. I was relieved, but at the same time, I had mixed feeling. If I had known sooner, I could have reduced my debt by millions of yen. An explanation might have been given during the orientation when I first entered university. But at that time, my awareness of this scholarship as debt was so thin that I probably just filtered it out as something that didn't apply to me. It might seem obvious, but most public support in Japan is built on the fundamental principle of self-application. This is no different for university tuition waivers. The university doesn't automatically pick out those who need help. Even when a system is in place, only those students who proactively seek out information and raise their hand were the ones who actually received that support. This isn't necessarily out of unkindness. It might be a mechanism to maintain fair procedures. However, it means the presence or absence of information directly leads to an economic gap after graduation. Today, the situation is vastly different from when I was a student. Back then, smartphones were just starting to spread, but now everyone is constantly connected to the internet. The cost of obtaining information has dropped dramatically. How well you can access and utilize reliable information yourself. I feel this is becoming increasingly vital for survival in Japan today. Section 4. Japan's scholarship system and other financial aids. Now, for those who want to compare this with your own country's system or are planning to attend the Japanese university, let me organize the specific points of system you should know. While this information is available if you look for it, knowing these details can significantly change your final financial burden. There isn't just one window for applications. It's crucial to understand that the JASSO scholarship, the national standard, and the university-specific tuition waivers are completely different things. Even if you're rejected to buy one, the other might be approved. Since the application windows are often different, the basic rule is to check both individually and consider using them together. Systems are also being updated. For example, a new framework has been introduced to make university tuition free for households with 3 or more children. Within JASSO, there are grant type, no repayment, time 1, interest-free, and time 2, with interest. Your choice will drastically change your future repayment plan. Keeping up with the latest information is key. Furthermore, beyond the government and universities, there are numerous private grant-based scholarships offered by various foundations. Some of these can even be used in conjunction with JASSO, so it is absolutely vital to keep a broad perspective and conduct thorough research into these private options as well. The overwhelming value of your grades while in school. The fact is, your grades while in school directly affect your future burden. The path between interest-free or with interest is determined primarily by academic performance. Especially your grades during your freshman year are a critical key to whether you will have to pay interest later. In this sense, studying hard effectively becomes an activity to reduce your future debt. Additionally, for grant-based scholarships operated by private organizations, a high GPA is almost always a mandatory requirement for application. This is another reason why your academic performance is not just about learning, but also about securing your financial future. A chance for major comeback looking toward the future. For those considering graduate school, master's or a PhD, there is a powerful JASSO system called exemption for especially outstanding achievements. If your research or grades are top tier, JASSO can waive half or even 100% of your grad school debt. A senior in my lab actually got his entire master's degree debt waived through this. I applied for it too, but I'll be honest, I didn't make the cut. It's a competitive and tough road, but the fact that a reset button exists is something you should definitely know. safety net, or correct risk evaluation. Lastly, JASSO has rules like repayment or deferral in case you run into difficulty, or exemptions due to death or disability. Furthermore, Japanese JASSO scholarships tend to have extremely low interest rate, even for interest-bearing loans. For example, the interest rate on the scholarship I borrowed was fixed at around 0.6%. While interest rates vary depending on the timing and the economic climate, as long as you are well versed in the rules, it is a fund you don't need to fear excessively. The key is not to be passive toward the mechanism, proactively utilizing the rules. That is the only way to master this unfriendly system. Section 5. Conclusion and final thought. Japan's scholarship system is changing even at this very moment. New support that didn't exist back in my student days, such as expanded aid for families with 3 or more children, the pay later tuition system for master's programs, and the grant-type scholarships have been introduced. However, as the support grows more generous, the mechanism is becoming increasingly complex. This means the gap between those who seize information and those who don't might be widening more than ever before. In today's Japan, education can be a form of self-investment, but it is also an information war. If you are choosing education as an investment for your career or income, you must coolly calculate whether the future return will outweigh that investment. Even if you are pursuing your studies out of pure passion rather than for a financial return, knowing and utilizing this aid system will be a powerful force in supporting your challenge. Finally, I want to ask you, how much does university tuition cost in your country per year? And compared to Japan's 15-fold increase, what are your thoughts? Please let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching today's video. I'll be continuing to deep dive into Japanese culture and systems from my perspective. If there's anything specific you want to know about Japan, or any system you are curious about, please let me know. I really appreciate hearing your perspective. Your feedback really helps me improve, not only in making videos, but also in my English journey. See you in the next one.